Friends, today you and I will be traveling together to discover the mysterious events that led to the disappearance of flight MH370 almost a decade back. Together, we will see what happened to this flight, how true are the theories related to this flight, and why has this plane not been found. This disappearance has been the greatest aviation mystery in all times. It was March 8th, 2014. At 12:42 in the morning, Malaysian Airlines Flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur. This flight was headed to Beijing. The flight had 227 passengers on board, with 10 flight attendants and 2 pilots flying the plane. Captain Zahiri Ahmed Shah, age 53, was one of the most experienced senior captains in Malaysian Airlines, and First Officer Fariq Hamid, age 27, was on his training flight that night. At 1:08 in the morning, this flight crossed the Malaysian coastline and reached above South China Sea in the direction towards Vietnam. Zahiri reported that the plane had reached its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. About 11 minutes later, the airplane entered the jurisdiction of Vietnamese air traffic. That's when the air traffic control of Kuala Lumpur radios the airplane saying Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9, good night. Captain Zahiri answered by saying, good night Malaysian 370. It was all normal till this point. But these words of Captain Zahiri,
70 contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
were the last words from this plane. After this, there was no news from this flight.
Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight
MH370
Flight MH370
disappeared en route to Beijing.
70, we are ready, requesting flight number 310 to Beijing. Malaysian 370.
Flight MH370 ended in the southern Indian Ocean.
Malaysian Airlines flight disappeared suddenly, and this became the biggest aviation mystery in the world. Merely 30 seconds after entering the Vietnamese airspace, this plane disappeared from the radar suddenly. It was 1:21 in the morning. The air traffic control in Kuala Lumpur didn't notice this. But when they do, they think that the plane had flown out of the range of their radar and had entered Vietnam's airspace. So there was nothing unusual. On the other hand, the air traffic control in Vietnam saw that MH370 entered their airspace but disappeared from their radar suddenly. They tried to communicate with the plane, but there was no response from the other side. After repeatedly trying for 18 minutes, Vietnamese controllers informed Kuala Lumpur that MH370 had disappeared suddenly. Generally, in such situations, Kuala Lumpur's Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Center should have been notified within 1 hour about the disappearance of the plane. But it was only after 4 hours had passed that an emergency response began. It was 6:32 in the morning. This was the time when the plane should have been landed at Beijing, but it did not land, and the search operation was called immediately. Efforts began to find the plane. If you look at the map, the plane was flying from Malaysia to Beijing. Vietnam lies in the middle as well as South China Sea. So obviously, the search operation began in South China Sea to look for the plane. This search operation was an international effort. 34 ships, 28 aircrafts from 7 different countries trying to find this plane that morning. But there was no trace of the plane. About 4 days later, on March 12th, it was reported that though the plane had disappeared from civilian radar, but a military radar had spotted the plane that night. And surprisingly, according to this military radar, this plane was last seen at 2:22 in the morning, but it wasn't located above South China Sea. Rather, it was near Andaman and Nicobar Islands, westward from Malaysia, above the Strait of Malacca. And according to the readings of this military radar, this plane was flying north in the direction of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, the other way from Beijing. This news left everyone shocked. Where did this plane go and why was it flying in its opposite direction to the destination? Some more days later, a new piece of evidence was discovered. from a satellite data in Marset, it was found that the plane was trying to automatically communicate with the satellite. It is actually quite common. The large airplanes like Boeing 777, they try and establish communication with satellites often to make their communication easier. But the problem was that when this plane communicated with the satellite, it merely tried to log in, trying to establish a connection. No data was transmitted about the location of the plane. The satellite was simply aware that this plane tried to communicate, but nothing more about where this plane actually was. But some scientists and investigators thought to use this to approximate the location of the plane. They thought that when the satellite received the communication, the satellite would have moved its antenna towards the direction of the plane. So they took the angle of the antenna of the satellite to measure it and make calculations upon it, and estimated the location of the plane. As I said earlier, the exact location couldn't be determined with the help of the satellite, but it could be used to estimate that this circle that you see, the plane could be anywhere within the circle. When it tried to communicate with the satellite, the plane tried to establish communication with the satellite 7 times. That's why you see 7 different circles. These are known as satellite handshakes. Every circle shows the time when the plane tried to communicate with the satellite. The last circle here, the 7th circle, shows the latest time when the plane tried to communicate with the satellite, the last point where this plane could have been. And it was really surprising because this circle was huge. It covers a lot of areas from Kazakhstan, China, Indonesia to Australia, and covering a vast ocean. The plane could be anywhere in that circle, or perhaps further than this. This was the last point it tried to communicate. After this, the investigators did some more calculations. With the speed and the remaining fuel in the plane, they estimated the plane could be in this shaded area of the circle. On this arc of the circle, it was famously called the 7th arc. This 7th arc is 2,000 kilometers west of Australia and occupies a large expanse of area. It was in such part of the ocean that hadn't been explored much. On this map you can see the location of the satellite that was used for prediction. The outermost yellow dotted circle that you see is the range till which the plane could have traveled with its fuel, with a flight time of 7 hours. And the curved arc in the red that you can see is the 7th arc, the place where the plane is assumed to have crashed. After this, several search operations were called. The yellow shaded regions are the places where the search operations were conducted, and the orange area is the priority search area, where the most number of search operations were conducted. By April 2014, the search operations on the surface of the ocean were stopped because it wasn't fruitful. Since the plane had crashed, it would have sunk into the ocean. It won't be floating on the ocean surface, and so deep ocean searches were being conducted. At this point in time, this was the largest and most expensive search operation conducted. For weeks, months, and even years, they tried to look for the plane, but didn't find anything. 3 years later, and after spending almost $160 million, they called off this operation. And this operation was deemed a failure. But there was one piece of good news amidst all of this. In July 2015, the first piece of debris was found from this plane. The debris reached the island of Reunion by floating. This island is in the east of Madagascar. The flaperon of the plane was found here. After this, in 2018, an American company, Ocean Infinity, signed a new contract with the Malaysian government. They wanted to conduct the search operations, and if they aren't able to find the plane, they won't charge any fee. So it was no find, no fee. On this condition, they began a new search operation. They have highly advanced underwater surveillance vehicles. While conducting this search operation, they were mapping the ocean floor, and in this search operation, they found in the area of the 7th arc that there are several underwater volcanoes, cliffs, mountains as well. They kept searching for months, but unfortunately, they failed in the mission too. They decided to run background checks on the passengers and pilots of the plane. After these checks, several theories came forward. So let's see what were the most plausible theories and assumptions one by one. First, they started with how could the plane disappear from the radar. Either there'd be an electrical failure in the plane, or there'd be an accident. Or there might be some technical failure in the plane because of which the equipment stopped working. Or perhaps any passenger or pilot intentionally switched off the transponder manually. In the first theory, Captain Zahir Shah is being accused. It is being said that the captain intentionally disabled communication and took the plane and crashed it into the ocean. But what could be the reason for him to do this? Some people say that he may have not been in the right mental state. Some people believe that he was suicidal. Some people claim that it was a result of hijacking, like a terror attack. But why was Zahir Shah actually being blamed for here? There are some arguments that support this theory. The first point is that the airplane took a nearly 180-degree turn from Vietnam back to Malaysia. Autopilot couldn't have done this on its own. The plane's pilot must have done this manually and intentionally. The second point is that the airplane was flown directly above the border between Thailand and Malaysia. It is said that it was deliberately done, so that they could escape the airspace radar for both countries. The third point is really interesting. It is said that Zahir Shah had a flight simulator at his home, which isn't very unusual. But on that flight simulator, he had mapped out a path. While playing a game, the path coincidentally was near the path that MH370 actually flew. Hearing this, you may think that this must have been the case. But the official in charge of the search operation completely denied this theory. He said that this couldn't have happened because there are many counter-arguments too. First, he was a highly decorated and experienced and seasoned pilot. He was respected by all. He had no family and economic problems, and he didn't have any past behavior to prove this. That's why the second theory that is afloat is that there must have been some hijackers or terrorists on the plane, and they must have done this. When this theory came forward, 2 passengers of the plane were under suspicion, and they both were Iranian. And they were suspicious because they were traveling with fake passports. One of them had the passport stolen from an Italian man, while the other had stolen a passport from the Austrian person. Both passports were stolen in Thailand. It is said that these men wanted to use the stolen passports to go to Europe and settle there. But in the end, this theory of terror was also rejected. We come to our third and most probable theory. It is said that the passengers and the crew on MH370 fainted because of oxygen deficiency, including pilot Captain Zahir Ahmed Shah and his co-pilot. But the autopilot kept on running. And then there must have been some technical malfunction on autopilot too. But basically the autopilot kept running till the fuel of the plane ran out, and then the plane crashed into the ocean. Now how could this oxygen deficiency have happened? There are several theories for that as well. Some people claim that there may have been a fire in the cockpit, an electrical fire. Due to this, many systems may have stopped working, including the transponder. Some people believe that there may have been an accident due to which there was a sudden shortage of oxygen. Almost a decade have passed since this incident. In 2022, Richard Godfrey, a retired aerospace engineer, claims that he has found the secret of this mystery. He does his calculations using some radio wave technologies. To explain this technology would be too detailed for this video. It is a complex technology, but it isn't a very new one. Basically, he used the reflections of radio waves to predict the path of the plane. It is a technology that can catch the reflections of radio waves. Once a radio wave is emitted from a source, it gets reflected by the atmosphere, and weak radio waves reach some other place. And if a plane is flying from the path of the radio wave, you can say that it can be noticed. He built a computer program that can recognize the flight paths of airplanes through weak signals. And according to his calculations, today, MH370 actually lies on top of the 7th arc and is 4 kilometers underwater. Under the ocean, as I said earlier, there are many cliffs and underwater volcanoes. You would say that this area was already searched. True, the most expensive search operation conducted by Australia, this area was also searched. But it is possible that they missed it somehow. Although the second search operation that was conducted by the Ocean Infinity, they had searched this point, their instruments were more detailed. But Richard trusts his calculations so much that he has pinpointed the exact location with an accuracy of 40 nautical miles of the location of the plane under the sea. He has proposed that a new search operation should be conducted within the radius of 40 nautical miles and they would find the plane. This would be a very small area compared to the previous search operations. They would have to thoroughly look here. But this is good news to resolve the mystery of this flight. There may actually be a solution here. Although some people do criticize Richard's methodology, that the methods he used to determine the location of the plane is not accurate enough, that the plane won't be found here. But Richard believes in his research. A drift analysis was also conducted, looking at the ocean current, so that if the plane had indeed crashed in that area, the location of various pieces of the plane that would have flowed with the ocean current to reach various places. And according to this drift analysis, some pieces would have reached Madagascar and the islands around it, and those have indeed been recovered. 27 pieces of the plane have already been found on several islands across the world. This drift analysis fits properly with Richard's analysis too. So perhaps in the near future, we may get to uncover the mystery about what actually happened to flight MH370. I hope you found this video to be informative. If you like the topic, comment below to let me know. Let's meet in the next video, and thank you for watching this video till the end.